Welcome to today's Minnesota Achievement Gap Committee Forum, with our topic being positive behavior equals academic success. So I'm Keith Hardy. I'm the newest member of the committee, and I get to be the moderator today. Some of you may know I'm pretty connected with education, especially public education, having recently finished 8 years of service on the St. Paul Board of Education. And excited about today's presentation with great leaders who I call my friends because of our time working together for our students. And I'll introduce them in a moment. We are glad you made your way to the temple here with a little change in our normal seating arrangements. Usually we're downstairs, but today with the funeral service, they found space for us upstairs. So thank you for making the extra time to join us today. And we should have some more people joining us as well. Just a couple of housekeeping details before we move into the program. First, if you have that cell phone or other noisemaker, if you make sure that's on mute or silent, so the ringing tones, as beautiful as they may be, doesn't interrupt our time together. Appreciate that. As you saw when you came into the room, you asked you to sign in, and that gets you connected to receiving our regular notices about upcoming meetings. So we definitely welcome you joining us for our upcoming meetings, and we'll talk more about that toward the end. And in a moment, actually after our presenters, our panelists introduce themselves, you will be given note cards on which you can write questions for the panelists, and we'll talk more about that as we get to that time. But for now, you can start thinking about some questions you want to ask them. But the format for today is we're going to begin with introductions from our panelists, and let me just go ahead and briefly introduce them to you, and then they'll come back and spend more time talking more about themselves and their school. So as you're facing on your right-hand side is Michael Thompson from Johnson High School, which is a grade 9 through 12 high school. Then we have Stacy Thine Collins, who is the principal of Murray Middle School, grades 6 through 8. We have Mike McCollar, who is the principal of Washington Secondary Technology Magnet School, grades 6 through 12. And then we have Barbara Evangelist, we call Bobby Evangelist, who is the principal of St. Paul Music Academy, a pre-kindergarten through grade 5 elementary school. So we'll begin having each of them sort of introduce themselves and talk about their school and maybe their connection and history in leading this school for about 3 to 5 minutes each. And then we have some questions that we as a committee put together that we'll have them address for about 40 minutes or so, the first hour. And then the last half hour will be time for them to answer questions from you all. So that's where you'll get to write questions down on the card. And let me say it now so I don't forget when we get to that point. If you can see, I'm wearing these glasses. I have really old eyes. So as legibly as you can write your question, then I can authentically present your question to our panelists. And so that will be very helpful when we get to that point. Let me introduce the other members of the committee right quick and thank them for letting me be part of their team. Many of you know Grant Abbott, our co-founder, and I don't know if Don made it today, Don Frazier. I don't think he made it today. And where's yes, there. Hi, Don. Hi, Don. I'm looking too far away. So Don Frazier, our former Minneapolis mayor, and Grant Abbott, co-founders of this great committee. And then John Riskin, who is taking care of the camera work. So you can see the video of today's presentation later on our website. And Catherine Page, who has been a great introducer, and they'll be John and Catherine will be handing out the note cards for your questions. And we want to especially acknowledge, among all of you, a special guest, and thank you for being here. But we have Bernadette Johnson, the recent superintendent of Minneapolis Public Schools, who's also considering joining our committee. So welcome Bernadette in particular, and all of you especially. And also glad to have Ann Carroll, my recent colleague on the St. Paul School Board, along with all of you here today. So let's begin with 3 to 5 minutes of opening remarks. We'll start with you, Michael, and we'll just go right down to time. So Michael Thompson.
Good morning. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm the principal at Johnson High School. I've been the principal at Johnson for 3 years. And I'll just tell you a little bit about Johnson. I've been in the St. Paul Public Schools for 30 years. I can't believe that, but there you go. And I actually taught at Johnson in the 90s, so it was like coming home when I came back to Johnson to be the principal. It was really fun. Johnson, we have 1,400 students at Johnson, so I'll give you a little demographics, just a little basics. We got 54% of our students are Asian American students in background. About 22% are African American, about 10% white kids, about 10% Hispanic kids. Just a handful of Native American kids. So, and 89% of our students are free reduced lunch status. So we got poverty issues among our students that we deal with every day. So, but at Johnson, and it's a East Side high school with a lot of tradition, a lot of sports tradition, which is still there, which makes it fun to work there because there's still a sense that our students want to have this high school experience, which actually can be challenging sometimes because we got these ideas that we want to change something, and our students are the one that come to us. No, we must have a pep fest. No, we must have homecoming, and which we do. We have a lot of fun. We try to do that. So I just tell you really briefly, and we can come back to this. There's 3 things that we try to do at Johnson on a daily basis. And one of those, and this is like, I call this principle for dummies, right? The first one is we have to have order, humane order, so that we can get our work done creatively. So we don't tolerate a whole lot of disorder, and we work with our kids every day to create that kind of order. And that's the key, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. It's working with students, not to them. But they know that what we mean by order and what we mean by creativity, and I tell them all the time that what we want to be able to do is have really good classes, and we can't do really good creative classes if you and your teachers don't feel safe together, and you have to be kind of playful and relaxed. And so then we can have the kind of creativity that we want. So we try to create order, and we do very intentional work on trying to create order that we do on purpose to create that pro-social environment, which we do all the time. So that's the first thing, creation of order. The second thing is we want to have really vigorous teaching. And so some people say, what do you mean? Don't you mean rigorous teaching? And you and Keith have heard me talk about this before. No, I mean vigorous. I want my teachers engaged. I'm not talking about hitting the kids over the head with a stronger hammer. Alfie Kohn talks about that. We want to increase standards by bashing them on the head with a heavier hammer. We're more interested in engaging them in real topics and conversations about the topics that we discuss. So we work with our teachers all trying to create that engagement and the vigor that happens. And so for my teachers, I tell them all the time, and we talk to each other about this, that teaching at Johnson High School is not the same as telling. Teaching is not the same as telling. And you got to figure out ways to engage these kids. And the second thing I say is to the students, because this is a two-sided street. And what I tell students is that this is not a spectator sport. So don't just, if I'm telling teachers that they're going to do more than just tell you stuff, then you better be ready to do more than just sit there. So it's a two-sided street. So we have order, we create order, and we do it in specific ways. We have try to create vigorous teaching, and we talk about that through our professional development and all the other things that we do. And then we try to do, and the third leg of my stool, I guess, is reward. Okay, so I have this saying, it might be a little bit too rude, but I'll say it anyway. We try to really reward the people doing things the right way. So if I got a teacher who's really going out there, for instance, my librarian, absolutely amazing librarian, when she comes to me and says, I need $10,000, even if I don't have $10,000, I will find her $10,000 to do what she needs to do. If I have another teacher who's just kind of putting in the time, doing the stuff at the base level, I'm not so enthusiastic about going out of my way. We'd be talking to that person about whether that's the job they want to do. So what I have a short term for this. It's like stroke your racehorses and monitor your jackasses, okay? Sounds kind of rude, but that's what I tell them all the time. So don't expect me. I'm expecting certain things to happen in this building, and we'll talk about some of those things as we go on. So those are the 3 things that I do at Johnson. I help create order, I work on vigorous teaching, and I figure out how I'm going to reward the people, students and staff, for doing things the right way. So welcome to Johnson. Come on over. The doors are open. How's that? Is that 3 minutes?
That's awesome. Thanks, Michael. All right, let's move on to Stacy.
Good afternoon. I'm Stacy Thine-Collins, principal at Murray Middle School. I am in my 3rd year as principal at Murray Middle School, and let me start by saying there's no better place to be every day. We love being at Murray Middle School. Let me talk a little bit about the demographics, and then I'll go into the vision and what we do to welcome and prepare kids as we move them on to high school. Our demographics, we're really truly a global perspective of our world that walks into the front doors of Murray every day. We have just over 700 students, and we are 30% African American, 34% white, about 18% Asian, with the two largest Asian populations being Karen and Hmong. And the rest is a combination of Latino and Native students and multiracial students. We are the middle school for Area E, and so we serve all students and welcome all students with their uniquely who they are. And as a result, we've got a variety of unique programming. We are a language academy site, and a language academy is for students who are brand new to the country. We are also a site that serves a variety of special education needs. We have 2 programs for students with behavior disorders. We have a program for students with autism and a program for students with cognitive delays. We serve them through an integrated model with I think we're approaching about 25 courses throughout the day that are co-taught, where 2 licensed professionals are in the room teaching students at the grade level content standards, with the learning specialist in there helping give access to that content through modification and support. Our middle school, it's a unique time for our children developmentally, and as they come from a single classroom into a middle school in St. Paul is not just adding a 3rd year. It's a program, it's a philosophy, and it's an approach. And our system, our structure, our day, our adult mindsets all welcome kids in that philosophy and in that approach. And so we work to bridge students from that single classroom and prepare them for a more traditional secondary model that they're going to get in high school. So we use a teaming approach, and our vision is not just about preparing them academically, but really looking at that social, emotional, and behavioral development. And we do that with some real pillars of expectations as adults. We really look at building intentional relationships with kids and building good instruction, to Michael's point about that, how we welcome kids in the classroom, and through a collaborative model with real-time data. The kids sitting in the chairs in your classroom are the kids you have right now. And so how do we, through informal and formal collaboration, use real-time data to welcome kids, teach kids at the level that they're at, build relationships with students, and move them forward. And that's where we get the real-time data. Our middle school structure allows for that, again, through informal collaboration and formal collaboration. As the new principal of Murray, when I was hired, the superintendent looked at me and said, "Climate and culture. That's your charge, do it." And so my first year, I did a lot of listening and learning. For those of you that know Murray, I think I'm gonna get some head nods. It's a school steeped in tradition and a community that wraps around that school. And the year I stepped in, there were real struggles. And part of those struggles were what we have moved forward in addressing climate is really defining 4 elements that feed a school climate. And that is the classroom climate, where good instruction and relationships are paramount. The student culture, how they show up to school ready for learning, and we are intentionally teaching that through our social emotional development program. The external climate, our parents, community, everybody else, and how they wrap around and support the school. And then also our adult culture in the building. Are adults working together with students at the center? Are we on the same page? Are we consistent for kids? And so our professional development program and all of the stuff we've done are wrapping around as teachers working for the sake of kids. We do that with a shared vision for kids, with consistency, and with fidelity. We don't let each other down in any of those areas. And so in the 3 years that we've done that, I can say we've done a complete turnaround in the climate. I opened this up by saying Murray is a great place to be every day. I'm not lying about that. It's a really great place to be every day. I can't imagine being anywhere else. And so I'm gonna leave it at that. I talked about systems, I talked about structures, and I talked about things that we've implemented, and we're gonna get to those through some of the questions in just a few minutes, but that is a snapshot of Murray Middle School.
Great, thank you, Stacy. And right before Mike introduces himself, some of you may recall in the recent years we read some stories and heard some articles about what happened at Murray, and it definitely has changed under Stacy's leadership. So I just want to point that out. Mike, please introduce yourself.
Great, thank you, Keith, and it's good to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Mike McCullough. I'm the principal at Washington Technology Magnet School here in St. Paul. Washington is about 2,100 students in grades 6 through 12. We're the largest secondary school in Minneapolis or St. Paul. Sorry, Dr. Johnson, but we have students with us for 7 years, and that really makes a difference in that middle school to high school transition. So that's one of the things that makes Washington unique, is that we can start engaging kids and they start feeling ownership in middle school. And then when a lot of kids struggle in that transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, at Washington, they're just going down the hall. You know, it's the same structure, it's the same system, some of the same teachers they see in the hallway. The teachers in 8th grade talk to the teachers in 9th grade, so we have that vertical curriculum articulation so that it really is comfortable for kids and they really have an ownership and feel a belonging to the school. The thing that I talk to our staff about, or we talk about all the time, is positive relationships with students and good instruction. If you have positive relationships with students, it's not rocket science, this education business, and good instruction, whether it's in a classroom or a school or a district or a state or anything, you're going to have success. And we work and we talk about that all the time. We've got a number of innovative programs. We're the Technology Magnet School for the district. All of the students in St. Paul have access to iPads, but our students kind of take it to that next level, getting them ready for kind of college and career readiness. Washington is a 90-90-90 school, right? The graduation requirement rates just came up. We're above 90% graduation. We've got about 90% kids of color, about 60% Asian, primarily Hmong, but a growing number of the Korean students from Burma or Myanmar, depending on your politics. But about 25% African American, 15% Latino, and very few Native American students. We have over 90% of our students receive free or reduced price lunch, which gives us a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. One of the other unique things about Washington is we have an extended day program for all of our students, all 2,100 students, from the first day of school till the last day of school. If you come to Washington, you're just in the extended day program. And what that allows us to do when we cobble funding together through a number of different sources, as well as working with a number of different community agencies, is to provide students not only extra academic support when they need it, or enrichment opportunities if they need that, but also things that they would not normally get to do. We have partnerships with Como Zoo, with YMCA, with Science Museum, and those are programs that middle class kids have opportunities to participate in all the time. But some of our kids, because their parents may be working or can't get them to those opportunities or don't know about those opportunities, can't take advantage of that. So it's how do we bring community partners into the school? In addition, we see things that we'll get to systems and structures, I hope, in one of our questions a little bit later, but everything is a series of systems, whether it's academics, attendance, or academic opportunities and behavior opportunities to be working with kids. So having a system for teachers to be working in where they feel supported, where they feel that what they do matters is important, but also I think it makes sense for students so they feel comfortable and they feel that they belong at the school.
Thank you, Mike. And Bobby.
Hi, Bobby Evangelist, and I think I'm at 30 years in St. Paul as well. Might be 31, I'm not sure. But I've been a principal for 7 years. My first year was at Franklin, and the second year we were one of the schools that was co-located. So we were co-located over to North End. And my second year principal, I had two schools under one roof, and through parent, talking to parents, talking to community, talking to the staff and kids, we then became St. Paul Music Academy. Franklin was a music magnet. North End was, they had gender classrooms, boys, girls, uniform, and all the feedback that came back, people wanted music. And we are probably one of the few elementary schools that have as much music, and I always encourage people to come and hear it. You wouldn't believe what our kids are doing with violin. We start violin in pre-K. I have, did I say this, 650 kids. We are one of the few schools that have full-day pre-K. Our demographics were approximately 56% Asian, 27% African American, 18% Hispanic, the rest Caucasian. And I would agree, all of the things that they're saying, I agree, systems absolutely in place. We are also a language academy site, welcoming new students new to the country. So we have 7 ELL teachers. We also have one of the largest autism programs in St. Paul. We have 4 autism classrooms. We have 3 full-time music teachers, and we have lots of people that come and visit our school, and people always comment when they walk in our building that it feels really good. And our teachers come in happy, and even my daughter was there for doing some observations. Like, everybody's smiling here all the time. The kids, they come in like skipping. You know, everyone's really happy to be there, and we feel the sense of joy teaching there, working there. It's a great place to be. Our kids love it, our parents love it, and I would invite anyone to come and see us.
Great. Thank you. Let's welcome our panelists. Thank you so much, everyone. As we get ready to have the panelists, the principals, address some of the questions that we as a committee created, this is the time when Catherine and Grant, if they haven't already, will be giving you each a note card on which you can legibly write your question that you would want the panelists to address when we get to the last half hour of our time together. Just to set the stage for today's conversation, and you heard a bit in their introductions, school climate is highly important in general, and especially highly important in the public's eye and in our stakeholders, our parents, our families, our employees, obviously our teachers, and our students' eye here in the last few months, and especially this week with what happened in our Como Park High School. Part of the reason that we have the principals here before us is because, as you heard, and as they'll talk more about, what's been happening in their schools is been great, and they're going to speak specifically about climate. Someone remarked to me, we hear about these incidents in some of our high schools, but we don't hear much about what happens in Johnson or incidents at Washington. And so I wanted Mike and Michael in particular to talk about, when they get to those questions, what happens in their school, the high school or secondary school, that helps with that positive climate. And Michael will talk, as you know, Johnson is our pilot high school, starting with a later start, the 8:30 start time, and so he'll talk about that. With Bobby at a music academy, she was talking about, we hear the importance of music education, so maybe that's part of the environment there that she might address. And then again, with the turnaround that Stacy's had in her 3 years at Murray, I wanted her to be able to speak about what she and her team have done in the collaboration with the families and the teachers in particular. So panelists, let's start with the first 2 questions on our list. Talk about, what is the climate in your school, and what do you do to maintain a positive climate and discourage inappropriate behavior? And Mike, why don't you start, and then you all can just jump in. Mike, sorry. Yes. Yeah, we'll do a different order.
Oh, we can get all good right answers from Michael and Stacy, but anyway, so talking about the climate of our school and what our staff does, I would say that our climate is overall positive. Obviously, we don't have quite kids skipping down the hallway. They don't really do that when they're in high school,
not in the school as they enter the building. They walk when they're in the school.
But overall positive. I was just in a chemistry classroom before I came over here doing an observation, and it was the teacher happened to be a woman of color. The kids had their iPads. There was 100% engagement. There was an older student that was working with the 10th graders on helping them with some of the chemistry concepts. I was refreshing myself with some of the chemistry concepts. So I think it's just, again, it gets back to that positive relationships with students and good instruction. We're doing, 6 different things at the same time, taking iPad things and doing all sorts of interesting things. So if the content is interesting, the students tend to be more engaged. Overall, we have a system, as many schools do, positive behavior intervention strategies, or PBIS, where we have a tiered approach. So our tier 1, for those folks not familiar with PBIS, our tier 1 things is what we call our Washington way, so being respectful, responsible, ready to learn. Everything kind of fits in that. So that's kind of the general instruction that we do with all of our students. We reinforce that, whether it's in the cafeteria, in the library, in the classrooms, in the hallway. We want students to be respectful, responsible, ready to learn. Again, to Mike's point on rewards, our teachers carry around gold cards. We give away gold cards. The kids can, as coming up now, especially as it's getting nicer, they can get patio dining for a gold card, so they can sit outside on the patio and have their lunch. or there's drawings, we get things donated and there's drawings and things like that, but it's catching kids doing something right. And so that's kind of the tier 1 piece. The tier 2 piece is, so say a student is struggling, and again, but it's not a major deal, but how do we prevent it from being a major deal? And so we have 5 behavior specialists in the building. Some of them are St. Paul Public Schools employees, a counselor type. We also have a partnership with St. Paul Youth Services, and they provide people to be working in the schools, contracting with us. Again, they're making that connection with students, and how do we get them re-engaged in learning? And again, our kids, just like every other kid, I've got 2 kids, high school kids at home, they come to school with a lot of issues. Some of them are issues from the community, what they see going on in the community. Some of them are issues going on at home. And some of them are just teenage issues, right, that have been accelerated with the electronics, right? We'll know on Monday morning kind of how the Facebook things were going on over the weekend by how kids come in, because it's not where you have to go to the kitchen and call your friends anymore on the phone that's in the kitchen like when I was growing up, and your parents are maybe listening in on it. I mean, they can tweet or they can Facebook out messages. Some of them are true, some of them are not true, to 100 kids at a time or 1,000 kids at a time. And so to work with that and deal with that, not only do we have to help our students be good digital citizens, but we also have to be reacting to that. But most of those things are relatively minor, but we want to get the kids re-engaged in learning. So we see that as our tier 2 piece. Then our tier 3 piece is how do we address severe issues? And so there we've got a great administrative staff. Our teachers are on top of it. How do we be more proactive than reactive? How do we not wait for things to happen? We've got a SCIT, as many or if not all schools do, or a school conduct improvement team that has teachers on it. Now we have students that sit on it, administrators that sit on it, and they meet bi-weekly. They're looking at the data. Where are issues happening? Are they happening in the hallway? Are they happening right after? I can tell you, it's in the hallway right after lunch. And we can track the data. It's looking at when the referrals are, or when issues are happening. So what are we doing in the hallway after lunch? Well, it's all hands on deck. Every teacher, staff member, we've got counselors, administrators are out in the building. It's not that kids are being mad. It's just that that's when they're kind of ramped up, right? They're excited to coming back from lunch. But if we can keep focusing them on the learning and focus on get to class, be on time, be learning, then they're going to be more successful. All kids want to be successful. We just have to give them an avenue to do that and the encouragement to do that. All parents want their kids to be successful. So we have to see parents as partners and divide strategies to be working with partners. We started something last year, a program. It's one of our tier 2 programs called Education Not Suspension. So if a student is involved in a physical altercation, they'll meet with one of our behavior staff after school rather than just kind of to suspend them from school, get them out of school. They'll meet with our behavior staff for a couple hours, and they'll talk about how this is affecting their eventual academic path, their behavior path. We talk about the cradle to prison pipeline. I mean, it's an in-depth, deep dive on the behavior rather than just a reactive consequence to what's happening. So again, these systems in place, I think, are what help us be successful. In addition, not only do we have a great administrative team and behavior staff, we've got great teachers. At the end of the day, the most important relationship in a school is between the teacher and the student. And the more we see all kids as our kids, how would you react if it was your own biological kid that was tapping on the test or walked out of the class? Well, again, you wouldn't want to throw the kid out of the school, but you would figure out a way of developing a relationship with that student and with that kid and getting them re-engaged in learning. So it's a lot of different things. It's great people, and it's working together in a system altogether.
Great. And Mike, thanks for explaining PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention System. Forgot to do that at the beginning, so thank you. Michael, what do you add with the traditional high school to address climate and expectations for behavior?
So Michael talked about a lot of things, the different tiers of approaches, but I'll simplify a little bit by simply saying that I have, we try to work on 2 sides. I need my adults in the building to be on the same page with each other. So we do a lot of work in that. So we're trying to be together. I actually have some shorthands for that. I call it toenails. And that comes from John Wooden at UCLA. Used to have his freshman basketball players clip their toenails when they got to practice the first time. And they're all, oh my God, these are hot shot going to NBA people. But that means taking care of the details. So if we say we're going to enforce the 5 or 7 rules that we have as an overall school, then we're all going to be on board. And if you don't like that rule, then you better tell me right now, because I'm going to be walking around going, we had a rule and you're not enforcing it in your class. So that causes a problem for everybody. So that's one side that we do in terms of just maintaining that order I talked about, making sure that our adults are on the same page, and then talking to each other like adults when we're not. We have to talk about that. The other one, the most important thing, is getting our students involved in the creation of that climate, because that creates the order that we want. And so at Johnson, we have a project on student leadership that I'm actually it's the best thing I've done in 30 years. In the people building, we're turning over a lot of our school to the students. And we tell the students all the time, for instance, we dissolved our student council. We instituted a senior leadership team who actually advises me. It's very interesting. They just in my office the other day advising me on some grading policy stuff that we're doing. Really, really interesting insights they have. And then we have student-led advisories during the day. So every advisory that we have, 15 minutes a day, is led by students. I told the teachers this first year, sit on your hands. Kids are going to make mistakes. But we're moving through that. But that has had a profound impact even in the first year on climate. Because the kids are in control of what's going on in that building. They are more concerned with climate than we are. That's their school. Okay? But we tell them all the time, we're going to stop doing things for you guys as teenagers that you can do for yourself. And there's a whole lot of things that we do in American high schools traditionally that makes the kids behave the way they do. Now, they're still adolescents, and I tell people that ask me how school goes, our climate is good. But we do have 1,400 adolescents between the ages of 15 and 18 in the building every day. That is 300 more people than were in my hometown. We had 2 policemen who were always busy in my hometown. Okay? So I think we do remarkable work, even though some days we got kids acting like kids with each other. But what I've seen at Johnson in the last couple of years, and particularly this year when we pulled our student leadership apart and put it back together in different ways, is the students starting to take more responsibility for that. And you can see things happening around school with that happening. And then we try to point it out. And it's kind of like Hogwarts school, right? Sometimes we got house awards and we got all kinds of stuff going on, which we learned from Michael and other schools as well, how to do those rewards. So I try to work on both sides of it. The adults got to be on the same page. What is it you want? The students need to have not just voice, but they need to own the school. Okay? And again, like I say, they're more concerned with that day-to-day stuff because they see it more often. I got to talk to grown-ups in my office all the time. I don't get to go out there all the time. I try to get out there. And so the kids know what's going on, and they know which kid's in crisis and which are not, and how to talk to them. So we're actually having kids. I had a student in my assistant principal's office the other day. He was messing around. One of the group leaders came in, just happened to walk by, and she said, "Mr. Davis, can I talk to him for a minute?" That is what I want to have happen. Because she knows what's going on in that kid's home, and she can say, there's help here at Johnson for you if that's the kind of behavior that you have to show to get the attention. And she talked him off the cliff, right? We didn't have to suspend that kid that day. She got him back into the class. Students did that. So we want to do more of that. So that's what we're working on.
That's a great story. And Michael, could you just briefly, the time change, has that made a difference in climate?
We're a pilot school for the later start, and Minneapolis has already done this. For some reason, they're ahead of us on that. I don't know. We're a pilot school for the 8:30 start in St. Paul's. Most high schools start at 7:30. We're an 8:30 start. We go 8:30 to 3. The kids were really funny about that when I announced that we're going to do that. They said, 8:30 to 2, right? No. 8:30 to 3. And along with that, our students take Metro Transit to get to school. They all have a bus card. It's valid from 5:30 to 10. We've actually found both of those changes to be very positive. We haven't seen a huge grade increase, but we do see more kids showing up in the morning. So we have, and really interesting to me, your principals over in Minneapolis told us that the same kids who were late on the regular buses are the same ones who are late on Metro Transit. So it has nothing to do with the buses. So what we've seen that's really interesting is first hour goes really well. It's really calm. The kids come in at a much more filtered out rate. They sit and play the piano in the commons area, have their breakfast. And then we got, what we've seen that's really interesting, we got more kids showing up second hour than we had before. So they were late, but they wouldn't have come at all last year because there was no bus to bring them there. And so that is a hassle for teachers. It's just showing up second hour. We got them in the building for 7 of 8 hours rather than just that you're not there at all. So that's a benefit, and we're still working with them. I just sent 70 letters to kids to parents saying, your kid's late all the time. Can we work on getting them here? So that's what we're working on. It's been a positive increase.
Thanks, Mike. Well, Stacy, you get them in their middle years. Talk about the climate, and then you mentioned in your introduction how you get them ready for high school. So you can talk about that.
So the climate of Murray Middle School is, it's very good, and it's one where we welcome students for learning, and we do that, again, not just learning academically, but the social, emotional, and behavioral learning. The way that we maintain that climate is, I think often some middle schoolers come in bigger bodies and we make some assumptions that they just know how to show up for school, and they don't know how to show up. And so we've created a very intentional teaching program, and we've done that through the structure of the PBIS. And so our first couple weeks of school, every adult is hands on deck with lesson plans to teach students what it means to be a middle school student. How you're respectful, responsible, and safe in the hallway, in the auditorium, in the restroom, in arrival, in dismissal, in the cafeteria, in classrooms, etc. We leave nothing to chance. We have a team of teachers that write lesson plans, and all of our teachers have a level of responsibility to teach that. Each content area takes half of their class period to teach. English language arts, for example, does the auditorium behavior. This is how you show up to be a respectful, responsible, safe student in the auditorium. The other half of their class is what it means to be a respectful, responsible, safe student in my classroom. And then we do a lot of relationship development around that. We have, in the 3 years, really taken that model and taken it above and beyond. And in addition to how you show up to be a student, is we've, through student voice and our PBIS team, we have some core values as a Murray community, and we do a quarterly core value lessons as part of our character education class. Our students meet in a class called Foundations every other day, and we really have taken that to create a Murray community that we want to have. And for all of first quarter, we have dignity as our core value. How you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you treat the school community. And we have a team of teachers writing common lesson plans around the core value of dignity, and we do school-wide efforts in anti-bullying and some different things. And so we really do not make any assumptions as kids enter that they know how to do school. And so we have an intentional teaching program around that. We also know that all of us have trouble adjusting out of a break. And so any extended school break, we have reteaching days when students are welcome back after winter break, after spring break, Thanksgiving, etc. And so our efforts are to be proactive and not leave anything to chance around that. We also use a tiered behavior approach. Our tier 1, we have some restorative practices built into tier 1. So if students are really struggling in class, they're interrupting their own learning or the learning of others, we have a behavior specialist that they're sent to see. We're down to about 10 minutes of processing time. They really look at their own behavior, how it impacted their own learning, the learning of others, how they maybe harmed the relationship with their teacher or other students. They fill out a processing form, they're interviewed by the behavior specialist, there's a determination and an assessment that they're ready to return to class. And that form goes back with them to the classroom for the teacher to engage with the student in a conversation so that relationship can be repaired. It's also used as a parent communication tool, and the teacher uses that to call to say, here's what happened in our classroom community, here's how your child processes it, and here's their commitments moving forward. So we've closed the circle on all the adults in that child's life. What that's done for us over 2 years is reduced our dismissal rate by, 60-some%, which is amazing numbers. And so our kids are in the seats where they need to be learning. That's where the climate happens, right? That's where the best relationships happen. So if we cannot teach behavior in a reactive environment. A cycle of suspension, come on back in, suspend, come on back in, does not teach a student how to show up for school and be a productive member of our society. And so that PBIS framework has really given us that. It's that model that I just described is working for 85% of our students. Our Tier 2 students, we design more individualized interventions for them. What a middle school model gives us is a team of teachers with real-time data designing the interventions at Tier 2. We do not have a student teacher assistant team that sits external from the classrooms. It is the teachers on that grade level. We collect data, real-time data, both academic and behavior, and put it in the hands of the teachers that have that student. And they design the interventions for our students who have 5 or more referrals to the behavior specialist or are not succeeding in 2 or more classes. And the teachers that know that student the best design the interventions. One of the new things we're doing starting last year, this is when you know your staff are 100% with you. We have consistency, we have clarity, and we're implementing with fidelity. We created an adult behavior matrix. Part of what we have in our expectations, our student behavior matrix, we have an adult behavior matrix, and that is, as an adult in Murray Middle School, to maintain a respectful, responsible, safe environment. At arrival, dismissal, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna stand at my door and welcome every kid by name. I'm going to be at my door to make sure I'm monitoring and actively supervising what's happening in the hallway. And so we have filled out the entire grid for every area of our building. If I'm an adult, this is my commitment in that area. The other thing that we've done is left nothing to chance about adults. As a middle school teacher, what does it mean to actively supervise? When I was teaching 25 years ago, I might stand in the hallway and say, hey, the Vikings beat the Packers, isn't that great? Meanwhile, over here, something's happening, right? And so we brought in professional development. Our PBIS leads in the district are amazing, and they came in and they taught our staff, what does it mean to actually be an active supervisor in the hallway? How do you do that? How do you engage kids? How do you monitor through your eyes moving and your body moving and not have that be the same 2 days in a row, because then the kids start figuring out your pattern, right? And so we really left nothing to chance with the kids, and we leave nothing to chance with the adults. And so our Tier 2 are adults that know the kids that are designing those, and then like Michael said, our Tier 3 is for our really intense high need kids, and we have very specialized staff that are working with those students. So we are not reactive. Discouraging inappropriate behavior is one thing, but teaching them how to want to show up. And one more theory that we operate in as a staff that I want to make sure is clear is we sweat the small stuff. As soon as you don't sweat tardies, the kids are going to take it to the next level. As soon as you don't notice that, they're going to take it to the next level. So as a staff, we've made collective commitments that the lowest behaviors are addressed every single time. And if you miss it, the kid's going to keep upping us every single time. And that's when you get to situations where higher risk behaviors are present in your school community because they've been allowed and not addressed at a lower level.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Did you all catch that number? 67% reduction in dismissals. Was that it? Yeah, we can applaud that. That's fantastic. So, Bobby, you get them when they're starting out, pre-kindergarten through grade 5. Tell us about climate at SPMA.
Well, I agree. Again, it's very similar stories that you hear in the upper and at the elementary. We directly teach too, and common language is really important. So we directly teach. This is what it looks like when you arrive. I mean, we've got the kids in the pictures. I mean, it sounds really simple, but if the adults aren't all giving the same message, then kids get very confused. And so we are very consistent in how we, everything is, from the time they get off the bus, it's very specific. They all come in one door. Kids are greeted by a minimum of 6 to 7 adults with a smile and a wave before they get to their classrooms. It's all hands on deck as kids enter. I think that's another big thing, and I'm sure we all share this too, is that, myself and my administrative intern, we are everywhere. We are visible. I am in the breakfast room. As in elementary, they all come through the cafeteria and they get breakfast to go, and then they go up to their classroom. So it's definitely a line coming through, and we need to have kids start off the day on a positive note, getting to their classroom safety, and our 3 R's or B's are be safe, respectful, and safe as well. And you can ask one of my pre-K kids, remember, what are we supposed, be safe, they can tell you. Because we have monthly assemblies, and we are a PBI school as well. We do celebrate. You have to celebrate with wins too. Kids can earn Rockstar tickets. We even give our bus driver tickets so the kids can earn a golden ticket on the bus. At our awards each month, we have moved to having students take over some of the work that we're doing. So some of our older students now are talking about which bus had the fewest write-ups, which classroom had the best attendance, and they're taking that work on. About every 6 weeks, we do a school-wide celebration, and it is earned for the whole school. So it isn't saying, oh, you know what, you were suspended, you can't go. No, this is school-wide celebration because we've done the work, we've been successful, we've earned these Rockstar tickets. Students kind of put ideas in what they like, but it's, like sports day, and it's not anything huge, but the kids love it. It brings you as a community closer, and the teachers get into it, and it's fun. Not only does our PBS team stat meet every week, we meet formally every week, but I would say every single morning I'm meeting with, my behavior team. It's like, this is what's going on today, and we modify and adjust all the time. If I know I've got subs, whenever I have subs in the building, my behaviors person goes down, gives the sub enough those red fun tickets for every student in the room to earn one that day, and then we give them like 4 or 5 Subway sandwich things that the sub then calls, draws names at the end of the day, you get a Subway. So again, we're very proactive, common language. We sweat the small things, we celebrate the small wins as well, and then kids, teachers, consistency in common language, and systems in place all day, every day.
Great. And so, Bobby, answer that question that we hear so often: does music help with climate and with behaviors?
Part of our school, we have McKnight Grant. We're in our second phase of it. We're in year 4, and part of that is getting lots of questions from the researchers from SRI that come in. And I was just talking to one of the research what do you think? What's going on in here? Like, what do you think is successful? And I was surprised that actually a lot of the teachers feel that the music really has helped bring us together as a community and has really helped with the behavior. I think it matters. We have about over 200 kids that are doing extra orchestra lessons. Everybody gets music. Like I said, we start violin in pre-K. And all of our pre-K 1, 2 kids, we have 2 rotations of music out of a 4-week prep schedule. And they are doing, have you ever walked into a 5th grade class and they're all playing acoustic guitar? It's really cool. Or you go in and they're all playing violin. It's great. So it is, I think it does affect, yes.
All right, great. So we move to the next question, and we'll start with you, Bobby, and have you all sort of briefly respond to this question. Tell us about, so you talked about the collaboration you have in your schools with your students, student-led, feedback, input, working with the teachers, your staff, adult expectations. Tell us about the hardbound guides for behavior, your handbook you have within your school, and how you've been using district policies, especially recent policies like our racial equity policy, our gender inclusion policy, our anti-bullying policy. How have those helped shape the positive climate in your schools? We'll start with you, Bobby.
Well, I do have a family, pack newsletter, family, family pack that we send home. We share with families right away at the beginning of the year. It's on our parents get it online or emailed in hard copy. We follow St. Paul policies, and we all have the rights and responsibilities guidebooks that we use to guide our decisions on appropriate discipline measures. Kind of lost where I am. So yes, we do follow district policy, and I think everything, the racial and gender policy, of course, has helped us guide help us through an equity lens. We meet every week. We have always looked through an equity lens and behavior and academics. Our belief in our school is that we hold all students to high expectations, both academically and behavior expectations. I have found when the expectation is here, kids meet you there. And I think that is maybe the main thing, is that there's no excuse. We know that all of our kids can show great learning and great behavior.
Great, thank you, Bobby. Mike.
And I think this answer is going to be similar for a lot of us in that, but it's how do you operationalize some of these policies and rules and procedures and things like that. Again, have gone to disseminating things electronically. Number one, all the students have iPads now, right? And so, and then you always have a reference to that. If you send home booklets or papers or things like that, who knows where they are by the end of the year if you send them out at the beginning of the year. Also, I think more importantly than the books or materials or papers is that teaching kids with lessons like they do at Murray, having lessons in our foundations classes where you can actually talk about some of these things specifically around the area of bullying. We just had an incident where we were reflecting with an older student on bullying that they had experienced when they were an 8th grader, and they remembered it, and it was affecting them 4 years later. So we think of, oh, well, they'll stop teasing each other once they get to high school. Well, these are things that affect students, not just when it's happening, but further on. And actually, it was handled really well. The student was able to confront the person who had bullied them in a, kind of a structured situation. And the kid who had done the bullying had forgot about it. I mean, this was 4 years ago. And so really talking to kids about what impact they're having, not only for that day, but for the future. So I think having those lessons. The other piece specifically is, and I mentioned cyberbullying earlier, or technology. What do specific things look like? And kids, just because there's somebody not standing right in front of them, I think they're a little bit more free to write something on a screen and send it off, to one person or 10 people or 100 people than they would say to somebody if they were standing right in front of them or sitting right in front of them. So really trying to develop that empathy as far as how does what you're doing affect other kids and affect other students. Kids at the end of the day know the difference between right and wrong. And we just need to bring it to their attention as far as how they're impacting their fellow students.
Policies, we operate within policies. We are a system, right? We're a large urban system, so we have policies. And so really, as a school leader, I look at what the objectives of those policies are. And they are in place, specific the racial equity, the anti-bullying. Our most disenfranchised kids need those policies, and as adults, we have to look within ourselves and look at an application of those policies so that as we are making decisions locally that impact Murray, as we're looking at our practices and our policies, how are we, any decision we make, affecting our most disenfranchised kids? And those policies, some of them newer than others, is really what keeps that on the forefront of our thoughts. Every decision we make, every practice we have in our building, every program we have, there's an impact on a group of kids. And we have to consider that, and those policies keep that in the forefront for us. And so we have, as a leadership team at our school, and we've got a couple leadership teams. Our leadership, we have a parent advisory council, we've got a school climate improvement team, I've got an educational leadership team with staff on it. And those policies come up as a way for us to really look at our practices, any decision we're making, any new program we want to bring in. We really look, what would the impact be on race? What would the impact be on our students? What would the impact be on our students with disabilities? How might this impact this group of learners? And those policies really keep that for us as adults. We have to look at ourselves and our day-to-day practices for the sake of each and every kid. And so when our policies have students at the center, it's good for us as schools to keep those up front.
Yes, as my three colleagues have said, we do have district policies in those very important areas, and they kind of help us create our vision, what the picture, the kind of equitable school that we want, in which we are closing achievement gaps and helping all students learn. And so those policies are very helpful in sort of the bricks around the building that we're trying to do. So at Johnson, we actually have a manifesto. Sounds like some sort of, marching down to the Red Army or something. But we do have a manifesto. We call it the Collective Manifesto for Johnson Manifesto for a Collective Attitude. And basically what it says is that we are going to work with our students and with each other to have what we call unconditional positive regard for each other, meaning students and staff, every day. And we're going to start over every morning. And that's actually, if we did that as consistently as possible, our policies would take care of themselves if we have our students do that. So it's not anything revolutionary. It isn't like the Communist Manifesto, but it's a manifesto that we talk about every year, all the time. And it's harder to do than you think, because we're all human beings. We take a lot of things personally. We don't see the iceberg underneath a lot of our kids' lives, and we see the tip of the iceberg, and so their behaviors are a result of all kinds of things we might not necessarily see. So I tell them, we remind each other all the time, just positive regard. Tomorrow's another day. Don't take it personally. And actually we use Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. I'm going to read you what he said here. It's very short. And so we have this on our manifesto sheet every year. And here's what Marcus Aurelius said about how to get along with people. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good and evil. But for my part, I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother, not in the physical sense, but as a fellow creature similarly endowed with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of these things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading. Don't take it personally. We're starting over again tomorrow. And so we think if we when we're doing a good job at that, we're taking care of those policies almost automatically, because we are more equitable, we are balancing things out, and we're not having stupid arguments about something that happened 4 days ago. Yeah, it's important, and our job is to help the kids see to move from one side to the other so that they can be a part of the community with us. So that's what we're about. So I went to the philosophical for you there. So
I like that. Thank you, Michael. Great response today, everyone. One last question from my end, and then we're going to go to our questions from our audience. Thank you all for writing your questions. Addressing an elephant in many of our SPPS rooms right now. Yes or no, with a little bit of explanation. Are students safe in your school? Are your employees safe in your school?
yes, our students are safe in our school, and they know, students know when there's trouble, and they know how to get around it if they want to get around it. So I think our schools are safe. Yes, kids get into physical conflicts with each other, and recently we've had a couple incidents across the district in which the adults were a part of it in negative ways. So in my school, I can tell you right now, we've had 11 fights with students. That's twice as many as we had last year. We had 6 the entire last year. But just like last year, 9 of our confrontations were girls on Monday morning, and they were directly connected to social media, which I'm starting to call anti-social media, okay? So it's not the kind of fights that you think are going to happen in an urban school. It's girls in each other's face. And I don't know if that's true about your school too, maybe, Michael, probably is. So that's what we're seeing. So, and most of the kids know those two aren't getting along, I'm not going over there. And we hear all kinds of stuff ahead of time. We can prevent most things from happening. But social media is in terms of safety for students, is my number one worry right now. It's not your traditional, some kids bringing a knife to school, they're going to hurt other people. Yeah, kids make mistakes and they do dumb stuff. But I think my staff is saying, tell the staff, back off, make a lot of noise, and we'll help you out if something happens. But it's not happening all the time. And so I think we're safe.
Yes, Maria's safe. And I can say that for a couple reasons. Some things happened in the shift of Murray climate over the past 2 or 3 years. Kids trust that adults are going to do something, and our student voice is really, really, really the way that we handle situations. Facebook, yes, I'm learning by fire. We have a Made for Murray Facebook page that I update now. I do. So I don't monitor Facebook, but kids, Monday morning I get the morning report. We call it the Monday morning report. Girls come in, oh, Miss Collins, you should have seen, right? And so I know I greet students at the buses. I'm in the lunchroom and I say goodbye at buses at the end of the day. I hold those times on my calendar sacred because that's how you know the pulse of the school. And you're also there and available as kids walk in to give me the morning report. And then we have conflict mediation, we do all of that, and we solve what we call at Murray keyboard courage. When kids are sitting alone with the screen, they have keyboard courage and they say some really awful things that they wouldn't say face to face. And so we're really working on lessons. Because it's become a behavior trend again and more Facebook stuff is showing up, we are integrating lessons into our foundations to address this. That's another thing that our character ed program does in that real-time data. We know where behavior is showing up and how we can address it in a more proactive way. So student voice coming and telling us because they trust that the adults are going to do something now. And that wasn't necessarily true a few years ago.
Short answer, yes and yes. And a little bit of an explanation, and what we talk about with our staff all the time is coming to school is the best part of most of our kids' day. And not just kids that, even my own kids. My daughter would rather be going to school than hanging out with dad, right? That's where their friends are. That's where the action is. That's where, they know that they're going to we have breakfast to go. We've got a great food service in the St. Paul Public Schools. At Washington, we've got 5 different options. It's a better lunch than I pack most days. And so, we've got great technology. We've got all these iPads. We've got thousands of computers. They're learning cool things, and there's adults that care about them. And so, and that have the time to interface with them in a wide variety of ways. Like I said before, number one is teachers in the classroom, and they're establishing positive relationships with teachers in the classrooms. But it's everybody in the school. It's the custodian. It's the food service person that smiles and says, "Hey, how's it going today?" It's the the librarian, or it's the social worker, or the assistant principal, or whoever they have a relationship with in the building. So again, like I talk to our staff, even though if you're having a bad day, the students, this is probably the best part of their day. So how do we build on that?
Yes, it's safe, but I would say too that we don't take anything for granted. We work on this every day. We are all hands on deck, all ears open, and kids will come up and tell you when we're standing at the buses. If something's going on, we get on it right away. So I think it is critical. Yes, we still go into classrooms. Last week, I went into every single classroom, just having a conversation with the kids. Remember, we're here from you. This is my responsibility. This is your responsibility. Do you feel safe? So it's throughout the whole year. It isn't just a one and done at the beginning of this school year. But yes, kids are safe.
Thank you. We're going to move now to questions from our audience. I want to ask that 2 of you answer each of the questions, so we can move through as many questions as possible, and let you decide which 2 of you for each question. First one is, please identify 2 characteristics about the function of the behavior specialist. 2 characteristics of the function of the behavior specialist.
I'll start with that. We have a behavior specialist at each grade level. The function of the behavior specialist is to be a proactive member of our team. So it's really around working with the student to restore the relationship with the classroom, and it's also to support our teachers. Our behavior specialists don't just welcome kids out that are in trouble, but they work with the kid to restore the relationship with the teacher. And the other thing that we have our behavior specialists do is to push into classes, observe what's happening, and really coach our teachers on what might be a better system with this specific kid or with a group of learners. So they support teachers in a proactive way and support our students in a proactive way.
That's a great answer. Just building on it too, the behavior specialists, we have, like a lot of them graduated from the St. Paul Public Schools, right? They live in the same communities as the kids, and they're really tied into the making that bridge between the school day and the out of school day. And so they're able to hook the kid or the family up with resources in the community where they might, whether they're recreational things or enrichment things, or if the kid needs a little extra support. We've got great resources in the St. Paul Public Schools. We happen to have formal partnerships with Wilder, having folks come in, Thad Wilderson having folks come in, but it's setting up those connections and relationships, as well as being in every classroom, being there as a resource to teachers, but it's just a great position.
Thanks, Mike. Next question. How do you engage students in establishing strong school cultures? How do you engage students in establishing strong school cultures?
So by talking to them constantly. So last year we had a walkout in protest to the stuff that happened in Ferguson. 60 kids walked out, and that's where our student leadership reforms started. Because I told the kids, you know, when you walk out of school, first, you can't come back that day. Second, there are consequences to civil disobedience. And the consequence for them was sitting down with me and figuring out how can you get that kind of energy inside this building that you just demonstrated outside under the flagpole in the way that you talked to the police guys, which was great, in the way that you handled the press, and that you walked to the state capitol to protest. And the joke at Johnson was the kids from Central drove. We walked. But they did a great job, and so we basically started, I went to the kids and said, we got to do this in the building. And one thing they told us was, we want to be leaders, because we have some things we want to say. But there's no time, so we built it in the school day. So I think listening to the students and talking to them all the time, it's those relationships. And they're kids, and sometimes I tell them, I can't agree with you on that one. I'm the principal. I get the final word sometimes, but they have that back and forth respect, and I think that's really helpful. And they need to be a part of it, and that's what we're working on.
Anybody else? Okay. Go ahead. For us, it's creating multiple pathways for student voice. That's what it is. We ask kids. Part of the work that we've done on school climate improvement team is really creating multiple pathways for student voice. And so we have 8th grade exit interviews. We have student roundtable events where we bring students with multiple perspectives together to really talk about their Murray experiences, what's going well, what's not going well. And we have a very intentional focus on student leadership development. We've increased the number of student leadership development groups at Murray Middle School, and we are moving next year to a class, an elective class throughout the day that is actually student leadership development class, where students will be interacting with standards around interpersonal communication, cultural competency, mentoring, some of those things. In our 7th and 8th grade leaders will be working with our 6th graders as they come in through academic tutoring, mentoring. We'll have a peer mediation team. And when I was new as a principal, my first year at Murray, I listened and learned, and the voice that had it absolutely right was our kids. They know what they experience every day. And I just had a pulse on what was happening at Murray because the kids told me. And they are not shy about sharing their voice, so creating multiple pathways for that is important.
Thank you, Stacy. Next question. How do you help teachers who send students to the office at a much higher rate compared to their peers, especially if buy-in is an issue or the teacher doesn't feel a sense of responsibility?
Well, my first thing is there's nobody in the office. So where are you sending? There's nobody there. The secretary is not going to watch your kid. Yeah, I mean, we have embedded in St. Paul. We all have embedded PLC time, and some of that time is working actually with. We look at our behavior data in the classrooms, and we're bold. We put up the names. They know, and it's a discussion of, gosh, why does it look like this in this classroom? Why does it look like this here? And so we talk as a team, and I guess for us, when we see kids, it's usually if a sub is in there, they don't know the other thing. But we are proactive, so we are all on walkies. I have a behavior specialist, a cultural liaison specialist, myself, my intern, and a counselor, and we have walkies. If there's an issue, we go to the classroom, and we work with the child to, get to the root of what's going on, and our goal is to have that child back in the classroom learning. And sometimes it's just a couple minutes, that we just need to take a little break.
So there's a couple of things. I mean, number one, it's working with the teachers to problem solve what the issue is. Sometimes there's just a tough group of kids. I mean, it's a bad combination of kids. It's great kids together. I mean, most of us, if we're sitting there talking to a student in the office, I mean, everybody behaves well in the office, right? I mean, in your own office, especially the principal's office, right? But I mean, it's just they get together and they get ramped up. And I mean, one of the funny things is, strange, is that sometimes it's in some of our accelerated classes, because those kids are with each other all day long and they're very verbal. And so and they're very excited about the ideas. And so getting them to be quiet and focus on what's going on is sometimes as difficult as the kids that are disengaged with what's going on. And so it's working with the individual teacher to problem solve what the issue is with that particular classroom. Something else, and similar to what Bobby was saying, we got out of the ISS room business, I don't know, about 7, 8 years ago. Oh, ISS, in-school suspension room. There used to be, let's send all the naughty kids to one room in the school, and then we're going to have we're going to have the person with the least academic preparation in charge of those 20 kids, and we're going to think that that's going to change behavior or great for the teacher, right? Because then we're just going to send them out. But moving the locus of control, or moving the intervention back into the classroom, so that there can be a quick turnaround. And because again, at the end of the day, the goal is to get the student engaged in learning. And so by working with the teacher and supporting the teacher in giving them strategies, sometimes it's adding paraprofessionals, sometimes depending on if there's a number of students with disabilities in the classroom, it's adding, moving schedules around, or giving the teachers more tools or structures or things like that. But how can we work with the teachers to support them? All of the teachers come to school every day. They want to have a great day where every kid is learning in their classroom. I truly believe that. And so how do we support them in making that happen?
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
The only thing I would add to what Michael said is data. Sometimes the teacher doesn't realize that they're the person in the school who's sending everybody out all the time, and it's usually only a few of them anyway. So we have incredible amounts of data that we can use, and sometimes we don't know how to use it, but we're trying to use it in different ways. So this morning I sent my staff singleton failure reports, which they get every couple of weeks now, which is like, if you got one or more singleton fails, that means the kid is only failing your class. That's low-hanging fruit to me, because the kid's passing 6 other classes. Now, kids passing 7 classes, there's something else, not passing 7 classes, there's something else going on. So I tell the teacher, I just need you to double check with that kid. Why is he not passing your class? So we do the same thing with those send-outs too. I just send them the data. You had 6 kids kicked out. What's going on? You having a bad week? What's going on? And do you need some help? Or should we come into that room and see what's going on? So that's it, more data.
Next question. Do you have a school within the school for students who do not fit into the standard classroom, especially at the high school levels? So do you have a school within a school for students who do not fit into the standard classroom?
Aside from our special ed services at the different levels of the federal levels for special ed, no, not right now. That's something that I think in the long term we need to be talking about with our leaders about because I don't think every kid's not going to be happy in a 1,400 or 2,100 person place, right? Some people want to go move to Gaylord or wherever, and be with 4 people. My dad would never come to the cities; too many people, right? So no, we do. Our special ed services are very strong. But I think that's something that we got to talk about in the long run, in our district and others, about what services the kids need, what's the best setting for them. Is it here? Is it in here? We do have an autism program that's a school within a school, but they're very unique students. There's a handful of them downstairs, and they're actually really wonderful. But no.
Next question. How are administrative transfer students welcomed into your school? How are administrative transfer students welcomed to your school?
Administrative transfer students come to us, and the beauty of that program is it is a fresh start. The other wonderful part about welcoming that student is we get a lot of data that comes with that student. So we know them very well, and we can wrap around them from the time that they come into the building, meeting a really unique set of needs that maybe were created in another school as they were getting to know them. So the school before us has done a lot of work to figure out interventions that did or did not work. And so we get a lot of really good data. And almost without exception, there have been a couple of exceptions, as we welcome students in that have been transferred in administratively. We take it as an opportunity for a fresh start and put the supports in place from the time that they walk in the building.
I'll just add to that, just as any new child comes into our school, we always, bring the parents on a tour of the school. So we do the same thing with administrative transfer. We're an Achievement Plus school as well, so we want to make sure the families understand that we've got services for Thad Wilderson, we've got children's dental, we've got all these things. So, we treat it as a new student to the school, and great to have you here. And again, we do get information, so we have supports ready to go on that first day, and to have that meet with the parent and the student.
Next question. So what I hear you all talking about are adults finally having learned what youth have always known. It's their school. It belongs to the students. And you all are figuring out how to work together so everyone is successful. How are you helping other administrative school staff and families not only get that it's the student school, but make it a reality that where there's, but make it real so that they're in their setting so we can actively expect and engage the other stakeholders. Do you need to repeat that? Did you get that all right?
So working with, so they're saying we're a part of a system, and how are we helping the rest of the system? One of the things that I like to be able to do is get it right where I'm at. And then I'm going to be bragging about it. And then I'll be talking, and I inflict this student leadership on everybody who comes to my office. I just had a school leader for a day, a bank president with me for a whole day last week. Michael had somebody over there. That's the first thing they're going to hear about. We're going to go to those advisories, and you're going to see what these kids can do, and we actually get them to do it. And we actually stop, making everything infantile. Then they'll make mistakes, and then we help them. So I kind of look at, because I got to get my own place straight, and then I can be helping the district folks. I mean, I got to tell you, be honest. Just here's a model, and everybody has to find their own way through it. But that's what I would do.
Just building on what Michael said, I think it's important that it's good to kind of steal ideas, right, from other places, but that each school has to internalize it for their school community. My wife happens to be an elementary school principal over on the east side. There's things that she does that are absolutely incredible that I could never do and that wouldn't work in my particular school. There's stuff that I do that I think is pretty incredible, but she could not do. So if you said, okay, this is what they're doing at Washington, now you have to do that, it wouldn't work. I mean, it just would not work because of the way that they're a Montessori program, and they've got these looping classrooms, and I mean, it's this great thing, but every school community is a little bit different. But it's welcoming the parents, it's welcoming the students, and again, not just the students, but the schools belong to the community. And so every time we can get the community into the schools, whether it's for something as simple as like caucus night or voting, where they're there, or we have a partnership with the lady that runs the apartment buildings across the parking lot, called up and said, hey, we got these kids, they're running up and down the halls of the apartment buildings after they get out of school. And it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense. There's no park building within walking distance of Washington. So she says, could we partner with something? So then we made up this extended day. And it wasn't my brilliant idea. It was the lady that runs the apartment building across the parking lot. And so we had kids, and some of them went to Washington, and some of them were littler, and some of them were bigger. But it's listening to the community and turning the schools back over to the community and figuring out a way that we can facilitate that in our system and structure and make that happen. We talk about opening up our libraries, right? I mean, we've got these great libraries and computer labs, and it's right across the parking lot from somewhere where there's not any computer labs or, plethora of books. So how do we continue to work with the community, not just the students, but the parents and the community members, to turn the schools back over to the community? And I just want to jump in, even though we're off questions, and give a shout out to the school resource officers in the St. Paul Police Department. That hasn't been brought up. We've got an incredible school resource officer. I know I'll get an amen from Michael at the end of the table there. He's got a great SRO as well, who happens to be their head basketball coach and is kind of the icon of the East Side, Vern Simmons. Our SRO, Tong Yang, his parents live across the street from the school. He drops his kids off at daycare at his parents' house, says hi to the kids as they're walking into school. I mean, these are members of the community, and a lot of times, just like Bobby was saying, the students know what's going on. They know what's going on in the community, kind of to that deep level, as a lot more than I do. I don't know that this person was a member of this gang and that person was a member of that gang and she shot her cousin and 2 years ago. The SROs that are connected with the school are invaluable. They're not there to arrest kids or to, handcuff kids or whatever. They're there to set up relationships. One of the best things we did, we moved the SRO out of the main office because he says the kids won't come and talk to me when I'm in the main office. So we put him up on the 3rd floor, kind of in the middle of the building. There's kids that stop by his office all day long. And again, it's not to go arrest people, but it's being the eyes and the ears of the community, and also giving us information that we don't have and saying, hey, why don't we figure this out so that we can be proactive before major things happen, rather than waiting for major things happen and then hoping that the police come and arrest everybody. I mean, that's not the function of the school resource officers. So again, big shout out to Tong Yang, who's our SRO, as well as Commander Casper and the SROs that work with the St. Paul Public Schools.
Thanks, Mike. Amen. I attended History Day competition at Highland Middle School. Over 100 students were making impressive presentations and reports on significant historic events. No media coverage. This was an opportunity to celebrate success. So I'll add a question, because there wasn't a question tied to it, but how do we get the media, because we're hearing all these negative challenges in our district, how do we get the media to cover positive events such as a History Day? Anyone else to speak to that?
We have a really good communications department, so whenever we have anything going on, we'll invite our communications department to come, and they will feed stories as well. So I think that's one way. Even school leader of the day, I don't know if all of us had a school leader, but that is one more person going out to the community and spreading the word. So I think starting with our own communication department, they'll call the news stations, try to come out. I know they don't always come for positive things, but if you have any influence, it'd be great.
We do use the local media. We have some neighborhood newspapers, and so we're always feeding them the positive stories. And they are extremely supportive of our schools. And they have a school news section, and we love the student stories that show up in like the Park Bugle and the Monitor and different neighborhood newspapers.
One last question for our time together. Given the importance of the leadership of the principal in creating a positive culture in the school, how can we train the next generation of principals to develop skills and attitudes that for leading schools, especially leading positive climate in schools? What experiences can you talk about that you have as you prepared to lead your school effectively? Everybody wants to speak to that one.
Well, I know that I've had an intern the last 6 years, and each year I have a different intern, and so it's really walking the walk, talking the talk. I'm over modeling for that person, and they see what comes of it, and I think that's one way of kind of spreading that feeds into our leadership in St. Paul.
So the other thing I think is talking to and finding folks who have two areas of love. I don't know how to say it. One is students, people who like to talk to kids. I don't know if I'm going to do that after I retire. I think I'm going to talk to old people, but that's, but, but so, and then I think that we have to be talking to people. Do you really want to be with adolescents or with younger kids every day? And how are you going to get along? And the second thing is a real understanding of how learning happens. I think those two things need to be a part of any kind of training program. And think maybe over the years we have sort of forgotten this is a people job. I tell my wife, I didn't get anything done today. She said, well, what are you supposed to get done? I said, well, I just talk to people all day. Well, what's your job? That is my job. She's right. She keeps reminding me of that. So I think we have to remind people that this is, I got a lot of help to do the accounting, and I got a lot of, and the district's great about that stuff, but it's that people part that we have to help people really practice. So I would be suggesting much more intense apprenticeships and things like that. I don't know.
I might just add one thing to that. Our school is full of leaders. We have teacher leaders every day that we sit that just step up and become teacher leaders. So part of my job as principal is to really engage them and move them to lead in their classrooms every day, but also how are we building their capacity to lead as leaders in the district. That's part of the beauty of the intern program. All of the interns that I've had as Murray principal were teachers in St. Paul Public Schools. And so how are we fostering and cultivating leadership within the staff that we have in our buildings?
Yeah, I just want to take it one step further back. And not only do we have great teachers in the buildings, but we've got 2,500 seniors that we're going to be graduating this June. And guess what? They all live in the neighborhoods that they live in, and they've all been through the St. Paul Public Schools. We're doing a pilot program with the University of Minnesota for next year to start identifying students and actually give them education college credits for going through education classes while they're in juniors and seniors in high school to look at teaching as a career. So like I said, we're going to graduate 2,500 students, and then we're going to be sitting here next fall and we're going to be saying, how do we get a teaching force that reflects the students that they're serving? And there's a disconnect there. And we've got, like I say, we've got great kids, and some of them are going to be aerospace engineers, or they're going to be heart surgeons, of course, if they went to Washington. But some of them might want to be teachers, and some of them are great teachers already. We already have seen them as student leaders, or we've got great leadership programs at Washington. And you just look at them, and they're 17 years old, and they're like, dang, they did a better job of teaching that lesson on fractions than I think I could have done. And they speak the same language both literally and figuratively as our students do. And so how do we keep them in the system, whether they're going to college for a few years, we keep them coming back during the summer, maybe we have them work in the after-school program, but how do we keep them in the system so that then 20 years from now, we're not having this same discussion saying, well, where are we going to get these people that reflect the students that they work with, but that we start building it ourselves right within the district.
Everyone, let's thank Michael, Stacy, Mike, and Barbara. Bobby.